So why did I ask Uphouse Audio to send me the topping LA90 power amp for review? Now, I rarely ask for review sample these days. There are two reasons. First, it has the best measurement ever. And second, I wanted an alternative to the Schiit Vidar. So whenever somebody asks me for a Class AB amp recommendation, I wanted more than just say Schiit Vidar. So let's start with, I was very curious about this amp because it has the best measurements ever. Have you ever wondered how was the meeting at Topping when they were building this amp? Were they trying to build the best sounding amplifier they could, or they were trying to build the best measuring amp they could? Sir, can we make the volume knob bigger? Does that affect measurements? No? Okay, go for it. Sir, can we paint it black? Does that affect measurements? No? Go for it. Sir, can we make it sound a bit smoother? Does it affect measurements? Yes? Denied. If your number one goal is to be on top of the measurement ladder, wouldn't everything else be secondary? Not really. That's not necessarily true. One can argue if it measures fantastic, the sound will automatically be amazing. Or their goal was to make the best sounding amp, and just by chance, by fluke, it happens to measure beautifully. Who knows? But I would say this, every single DAC and preamp I've tried that measures well have one thing in common. They sound very clean and they have a lot of clarity. I was wondering if this would be the same also for this amp. Yep, the LA90 did not disappoint, and it does have those characteristics, which I will come back shortly. So as I mentioned, the second reason I asked for a review sample is to look for more Class AB amp options. Instead of just recommending McDonald's as the only fast food burger, it would be nice to also suggest, Burger King, A&W, Harvey's, and so forth. Yes, there is the Emotiva and probably a few other brands out there, but I've not listened to them yet. So when I got the topping LA90, my first question was, can it destroy the Schiit Vidar power amp? And going forward, hey man, I would just recommend the LA90. The first minute I powered up the LA90, I told myself, man, if I got this amp at the beginning of my audio journey, I would have been super happy and my audio quest for better sound would probably be over. You see, my taste at the time was different. At the time, my priority is clarity and detail. The brighter it is, the better it is. Make my ears bleed? Fantastic. Well, I'm not saying the LA90 will make your ears bleed, but guess what? The LA90 has exactly that kind of sound I like. Well, when I first start my audio journey, very transparent, very clean, top end sparkles like no tomorrow, super detailed, and it has enough of a dark background. The mid-range has a slight upper bump, giving a strong presence in the vocal. So you get that forward presentation. Bass is surprisingly quick and strong for a 50-watt amp that uses a SMPS power supply instead of a heavy toroidal transformer. It uses a SMPS power supply, man, that looks like my Xbox power supply. And I can lift it up with one hand. Now, I have mixed feelings about this because, my heart, I like amps that weigh like a refrigerator. The heavier, the better. But my body loves amps that are light because, I'm too old to carry heavy amps around. So, just with that, I think a lot of people would like the topping LA90. But I cannot say I'll automatically recommend it over the Vidar because the presentation is very different. So which one you choose would depend on your taste. Without a doubt, if you want maximum clarity and transparency with a forward presentation, hey man, the LA90 is your holy grail. Also, not to mention, the top end is cleaner with the LA90. If you prefer a more neutral, upper mid-range, right, relatively speaking, a bit less glare, warmer sounding, then yeah, the Vidar is your better choice. Now, keep in mind, I had the Vidar many years ago, so take my conclusion with a pound of salt. Now, having said all that, it is not all sunshine with the LA90. You see, I do have one big problem with the LA90. Objectively, the amp checks a lot of boxes. But here, let me put it this way, okay? I asked an audio buddy of mine who got a chance to test it at his place. I said, what would you say are the negatives? He paused for a moment to think about it, almost as if he was struggling to find a negative. And also he understands the price versus performance criteria. So while he was still thinking, I said, I wish it had a bit better musicality, and he instantly responded, yeah, that's it. So what do I mean by that? Better musicality. Is that even proper English? Today, let's talk about the topping LA90, best measuring power amp ever. A big thank you to Atmos Audio for sending me this unit. I do see many good feedback from them, so if you want to get a topping LA90 or any matrix or topping products, please give them a chance as it indirectly supports this channel. The $900 USD LA90 is a 50 watt class AB amplifier. If you're only using 10 watts in 8 ohms, the THD is like 0.00007%, the same chance as you winning the lottery ticket. Given most people don't use more than 10 watt under normal listening conditions, if you happen to be one of those audiophile who have super listening powers and can distinguish between 0.07% and 0.0007% distortion, hey man, you have just found the holy grail of amplifiers. You have the option to get 2, so you can monoblock them, but your speakers need to be 8 ohms to do that. It has only XLR input. Like what? That's almost like expecting you to have a DAC or preamp that has XLR outputs. Like, I don't know, maybe like a topping Pre90, a topping D90SE, right? But they do look good together when you stack them up. The power supply is external, great for those who want to use the LA90 on the desk. You only need a little space and you can hide that big power supply underneath your desk. Definitely scores a 10 on 10 for the wife approval factor. So earlier I mentioned about I wish it had better musicality. So what do I mean by that? Okay, this is how I categorize stuff. If an amp is analytical, it means I can really analyze everything in the song, the breath and the saliva of the singer. I will hear every single detail. Someone drop a feather during recording, yeah, you'll hear it. With this kind of system, it's almost like you're using the music to listen to your system, as opposed to using your system to listen to music. The LA90 has the resolution for me to categorize it as an analytical amp. 100% not a negative. As I said, a few years ago, this is my kind of sound. Now, the other type of amp, I call them musical amps. Usually the top end is on the softer side, a bit rolled off. You stop paying attention to all the details and just enjoy the music. The downside, it can sometimes be a bit dull and laid back. Now, I'm generalizing here, okay? What about musicality? It is different than musical, okay? For me, this is how I defined it. You know the top-end detail, sharpness, dynamics, speed, and all the audiophile things? It is the balance of all that which gives me either good musicality or not. So that's why an amp does not need to have the best resolution, the best dynamic, the best color to draw me in. When the balance of everything is just right, magic. So you can have an analytical DAC, an amp with good musicality, a musical amp with good musicality. But of course, it still depends on your taste. So what about you? What makes a gear have good musicality for you? Please put it in the comments. The problem with the LA90 is when I use it with the topping D90 and the Pre90, it was a bit too much. Too clear, too transparent, too bright. So it keeps distracting me. On top of that, the LA90 has an upper mid-range bump, a bit like the Yamaha AS2200. Not as strong, but it is at the limit where I start hearing glare and on the verge of being sibilant. So that also draws me out of the music. I know the assumption is you should pair the LA90 with the D90 or the Pre90 for best synergy. I guess if you're chasing after the ultimate clarity, sure. So perhaps that combo has good musicality for you, but for me it's a bit too much, right? Or a question of taste. For me, I prefer something a bit more easier on the ear and smoother, so that is why I could not really enjoy the LA90 with the topping D90. Now, having said that, this is where years of experience comes in. I just need to find something that has good synergy with it for me. So guess what? I took out like the worst measuring DAC ever from SMSL, the D3R2R DAC. plugged it to the LA90 directly, and guess what? It sounded very good. I was laughing because worst measuring DAC plus best measuring amp equals amazing sounds, like the dark side and the light side brings balance to the force, and there you go, just right. I then tried with the Gusto R2R DAC, hoping it would be a good match. It was okay, but I still prefer the worst measuring DAC, SMSL D3. Then I tried with the louder Schumann DAC. Now this is a very musical DAC. Guess what? Musical DAC plus analytical amp, hey man, sounded pretty good. Okay, please understand, my current taste, I tend to favor a smoother presentation, right? It must be an age thing. I notice older people tend to like a smoother presentation. I then try adding the ladder preamp, something that is built based on the R2R technology. Yeah, this is a preamp. This preamp is pretty good. Wait for my review. In this case, it was a bit too bright for my taste. So my point is, I was able to get the LA90 to sound to my liking by pairing it with the right gear. Gear is like an ingredient, man. There is almost no bad sounding gear today. You just need to know how to mix and match. I do want to add though, I did try with the Manapan for fun. So I plugged the D3 to the LA90 to the Manapan. It sounded actually good. But I could not get the volume past 70 dB because I didn't use a preamp. So, and because I start feeling, yeah, it feels like it's running a bit out of gas, I didn't bother trying with a preamp. So my recommendation for Manapan, probably, yeah, not a good choice. So let's end the video now. The LA90 brings an extra choice to the market if you're shopping for an amp. What I want to remind everyone is to keep your expectations in check. If you're used to $4,000 amps, please don't expect this amp to perform at that level. Okay, so who is it not for? If you listen loud, as in 90 plus dB, and your speakers are not sensitive, right, 87 dB below, you don't want that. You like a more laid-back presentation where your goal is to relax? Yeah, not for you. Who is it for? If you like clarity, you want to hear all the details, you like the upper mid-range bump that gives you that forward presentation, you want a clean sound, you want something small and does everything good enough, then this is probably one of your best choice. Because man, that clarity is really something. The sparkle on the top end, I find that quite impressive. After all, I guess it did not win the best measuring amp for nothing. All right, guys. So I think that's about it for me, and I'll see you next time.
I never think, I never know, I'm stuck and left alone. I've been lost, I've been fine, my cause is not